Us gamers have been using proxies since before board games were a thing. Down a Candyland piece, grab an army man, or maybe one of those creepy naked little trolls. Now in TCGs, there are many legitimate reasons for us to use proxies, but what we use and how we use them matters, because there's a fine line between a high quality proxy and a fake. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, Flesh and Blood friends. Welcome back to Dice Commando and Go Again. A fabulous cast and happy Friday, the final weekend of Road to National season, which is going to be very interesting. Do we think Briar can get her 18 points this weekend? I don't think she can, but man, that would be interesting now, wouldn't it? But that's a topic for a different discussion, because today I want to talk about proxies and proxy etiquette in Flesh and Blood. Really, what, how, and when is it okay to use proxies? Now, I'm a big fan of using proxies. Now, what do I mean by proxies? Obviously, it's something that's a stand-in for a real game piece, and I'm a huge fan of using those when the situation is correct. Now, part of what inspired this is I recently made a purchase on TCG Player, which I don't usually do, but there was a good deal out there. And the two cards came in, and I already had my spidey senses tingling, and they came in and they didn't look quite right. And they ended up being Japanese printing versus the card that I already had of that version. Everything's on the up and up, so no issues. That said, it's no secret to most of us in the Flesh and Blood world that the rise of really high quality proxies, aka counterfeits, it's on the rise, right? It's been a thing for a while, but folks are getting good and technology's getting good. So I just want to remind everybody, right? Buy reputable, right? Buying on TCG Players, okay, right? It's often the best way to get low prices, but you do open yourself up for exposure if you don't know what you're doing, right? So again, Travis over at Fab Foundry, I always want to steer you over there. Travis is fresh from pack to you, essentially from pack to his BCW box to you, and they're legit, and he knows what to look for way better than the majority of us do. So when you're buying from a reputable seller. There are many others out there. Make sure to look at them first. And then know your risk, right? Know your risk when you're making a decision. Right, so proxies themselves. So when is it okay to use a proxy? Now, this is actually, for most of us, a very easy question. Competitive play at any level? Absolutely not, right? If you're in some sort of formal tournament, your LGS, all the way up to Worlds, that's so self-explanatory, never okay. And when you're sitting with your buddy at the kitchen table, many times it is okay. And that tends to be very black and white, but there's this whole big thing in the middle of casual / social gaming, right? Because a lot of times people forget, and it's actually kind of a little button with me in the Flesh and Blood community, is you don't have to be sitting at your kitchen table to play casually. You can meet your friends at a bar, have a playgroup meetup, whatever it may be, right? And my rule on that is, remember, it doesn't matter how comfortable you are with what you have or what you're using. It matters what your opponent is okay with. And specifically to that, on the social gaming thing, and I haven't really seen this come up in Flesh and Blood, but I do see it come up frequently at Commander Night, even as someone who's not playing in Commander Night, is you'll have someone sit down at right? What they do is they basically pod up, they kind of get in a queue, they wait, they're like, hey, are you playing Magic? Right? And then they sit down, and then you'll see someone whip out their deck, everyone gets set up, and it's like, oh, by the way, I've got some proxies of this. And that's a really crappy way to do it, right? Because that you may, you're not trying to pass them off for forgeries, anything like that, completely legitimate, but those people may not be comfortable with you using proxies, but at that point, they're kind of already committed. And that's a bummer, right? So make sure to be upfront, especially in those, like if you're meeting your buddies at a bar or something like that. Again, to you, it may not matter, but to them it may, right? So let's make sure that we're all on the same page going into it, right? And again, you may have the best intentions, but not everyone does, right? And to you, a high quality proxy that you have, that shiny, like nice E-Strike or CNC, to someone else, they consider that may consider that to be a fake. All right. So then there's just a real quick comment on testing, right? Testing is one of the best times to use proxies. About 6-8 months ago, I met my good buddy Mike at a bar, and he wanted to try Prism. And I was like, you know what? I think you'd like Prism. Let's run you through how she works. And I didn't have all the stuff, so I printed out I'll kind of show you what I use in a minute, but I printed out some cards so we could use, because of course I'm showing my buddy what he might want to play one day. It makes no sense for us to drop several $100s to buy the cards for that, so we printed stuff out so he could get a good feel of how she played. And then obviously if he was going to commit to that, we would have bought real cards after that, right? And that is like the perfect example of testing and when it's okay to use proxies. That said, there's a lot of folks out there who, you know who you are, or you know who they are. They've been testing for 6 months in their deck, right? And I don't know what the right time is. You got to do you. But at some point, you've got to be willing to actually commit on the testing as opposed to just testing. All right. Now, the how matters. And I think I kind of already spoke to that a little bit in, again, when you sit down to those casual groups and stuff like that. But it's how you represent it. It's how you approach it and how you approach that discussion. All right, so to start off the what is okay part, what I have across the screen right now, these are these are the types of cards that I personally use for proxies. You see on the left there, I have normal flesh and blood cards that I've just used a Sharpie to write on. These for me are what I call quote unquote marker cards. And it's the case where I do own 3 CNCs. I now own 3 E-Strikes, but I don't own 9 copies and I have more than one deck, right? I mean, that's a very, very general thing for most of us players. So what I do is I hold the place in other sleeves for that. Now, if I'm going out with my buddies and we're all bringing multiple decks and we're just going to be jamming for a couple hours, it's perfectly acceptable in those type of situations to not swap those out. And in that case, it becomes a proxy card, right? Because everybody knows what CNC does. Everybody knows what E-Strike does. Now on the right there, you see another type of proxy that I use, which is more of a, quote unquote, legitimate proxy, whatever that may mean. But the idea there is it has the wording on it. And these are really used more for testing and, specifically to glint and spoils. These are actually my placeholders in my Dorinthea deck and or Kassai deck when I swap them out, because I only have 3 glints and 3 spoils and so on. But I do keep those in those decks because they're ones I play a lot for, again, that social gaming type atmosphere where I want the person to be able to read the card. And, I spoke earlier to the case about meeting my friend Mike at the bar. And obviously, if he's learning the cards, he needs to be able to read the card. Having something written on that says, Herald of Erudition, that's not going to do him any good. You need to have actually the thing written on the card. But you will notice here, and this is a very big thing for me personally, is that those cards are printed in grayscale. That is not just a cost savings measure on my part. That is because I in no way want to represent those cards as being real, right? I'm not trying to pretend they're real. I'm not trying to indicate anything otherwise. I am trying to indicate, obviously, that these cards are not real, right? And that's kind of really what it boils down to for me is the worse your proxy looks, the more legitimate your proxy is. That's how I see it. Now, what I mean by that is do not try to represent a real card, right? There's a lot of places, again, we're very aware we can go out and we can get some very high quality proxy cards. But really ask yourself, what do you need your proxy to look high quality for? If you are just trying to play the game and you don't care about how the cards look, then you shouldn't care if it's grayscale or some handwritten piece of paper or whatever it may need to be for you. If you are at the point where you need your proxy card to look good, I think you need to ask the legitimate question of what you're really driving for, right? What you're really after. And again, I want to wrap back to one of the things I said earlier, right? Proxy quality and counterfeits, there is a very, 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 very fine line between that, right? If you want a high quality, beautiful proxy, again, you're not going to go out and do anything wrong with that, but other people will. Other people will, and that generally only results in people who don't know getting screwed, getting hurt. So by us going out and supporting these folks that are making these proxies, counterfeits, right, we're only actually continuing the problem. And to kind of wrap this up, in my opinion, that's why we should all care. So kind of in conclusion, my thoughts on this is, again, I love proxies. They are a great thing for what they're supposed to be used for. But the minute that we start kind of crossing into that line of what they're being used for and how we use them, and pushing other folks into maybe being in uncomfortable situations. And again, the line is very clear. Everyone accepts that the point that you start to use a proxy in a competitive environment, it is a fake. That is a true statement, right? Because it is required that you use real cards in competitive environment. And if you're not doing that, you're not using it as a proxy, you're using it as fake. That is zero question. Everyone understands that. Really, where my focus is more on what is your opponent comfortable with? What is your group comfortable with, right? Don't put someone else in an uncomfortable situation. And the minute that you're doing that, you're kind of starting to toe that line. So again, that's my piece today. Let me know what you folks think below, right? Proxies are a great thing, but don't make sure we're far back from that line. If not else, folks, have a great day, great weekend. Go Briar, I guess. Go Briar and go Commando.